Welcome, friends and fans, to The Artist's Voice. Before I bring on my guests, I want to just give you some information. I launched the podcast back in 2018 to empower artists to tell their stories and talk about their art. All genres are welcome, as well as all international guest artists. You may listen to the show on most podcast platforms. A videotape will be available on Facebook and or YouTube. And you may also listen to all episodes of the show on the website for the show, which is www. Well, you can see it at the bottom of your screen scrolling across there, theartistvoice.info. And you may view a headshot of each artist and samples of their work on the site as well. All that being said, we are broadcasting today from my studio in Salt Lake City, Utah, and streaming on Facebook. This is Jerry Hardesty, host and producer. And for episode 94 of the show, my guest today is photographer Ashley Ehrhardt from the Chicago area. Welcome, Ashley, to the show.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Great. Well, you state that by formal training, you are a psychologist. Well, how do you integrate being a psychologist with your art? Does it inform your art, or how does that work?
Oh, that's a good question. I do think that psychology infiltrates pretty much everything I do in my life. You can't turn it off. So there is an aspect, I think, to art that is very psychological because it's a way that we are expressing ourselves. So there's a little bit of yourself in every piece of art that you produce, I feel, in my opinion. So absolutely, I think there's a little bit of myself in every image that I put out.
That's great. Very good. Many artists say that they're bearing their soul. They're leaving their soul on the table.
I would agree with that, or seeing things through my lens, perhaps.
And I like that expression. You have on your site, your website, you have behind the lens. I believe that's what you call it. I thought that's very clever to label your artist statement or about yourself as behind the lens. So now, are you a practicing psychologist?
I am a practicing psychologist. I don't do therapy. I do something called psychoeducational diagnostic testing. So I test for learning disabilities, autism, ADHD, giftedness, that type of thing.
All right. You explained it. I started to say, would you please speak English for this layman? But yeah, I understand. So it involves a lot of testing. Well, I love your black and white photography.
Thank you.
I think it's very, very expressive. I believe, and I've done some black and white paintings as well, but I believe that creating a black and white, whether it's a photograph or a painting, is very difficult to get the right effect. How do you feel about that?
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I do think that black and white lends a mood to an image that you wouldn't ordinarily get. However, to really evoke the type of feeling that I have, as we were kind of talking about before, in my soul, or what I was envisioning, or what I'm trying to get across, I have to work really hard with lighting to make that happen. So I think I work mostly with lighting, and angles are the two things that I focus on the most when I'm shooting. But if the lighting is off, the entire mood is off.
Good point. And I think that has a lot to do with painting as well. You have to have have the right values in combination to make it effective. Well, Ashley, in your work, I have to say that you take selfies to a whole nother level.
Well, part of that is specific to my most recent series, and also because of the times that we're living in. I started the series sort of in the worst part of lockdown of COVID. And also because of circumstances in my own life, there wasn't anyone else around for me when I was starting that project. So to do the images that I wanted to, I only had myself to work with. I didn't have anyone else that I could access at that time.
So you're getting ahead of me. I have other questions relative
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thanks for sharing. But so you were basically alone
Mm-hmm.
in all of these shots. So you weren't intimidated.
Um, no, I would say I was very intimidated because if you know me well, you know that I hate being photographed. And also, I feel you'll notice that my face is not in any of the images,
Right.
and that's very purposeful. And there's two reasons for that. And the first, more sort of obvious response to that is that I don't like the way that I photograph. I'm uncomfortable being photographed. I feel most comfortable on my side of the lens. And that's sort of getting into another psychological aspect that we were talking about earlier, that a camera allows me to feel comfortable in a setting where I'm interacting with other people in a way that feels safe for me. So I'm behind my lens and feel very safe there. And in this series, I'm photographing myself. And I actually, when I first started posting them on my website, I thought, well, no one's going to know that it's me.
Yeah, right.
And then I think as more were added to the series, it became more obvious, and people that follow my work, it became very obvious. So that cat is sort of out of the bag. But the other part of it is that what I was trying to project through these images, there needed to be a certain level of anonymity. And I wanted other people to sort of be able to put themselves in the image. And that would have changed the entire dynamic that is created when an observer is viewing an image. And I think when you've got a human face in there, it just reads differently.
Yes, yes. Well, based on what you just said, I have to ask you the question. Now, do you feel safe right now because you're on the other side of the camera?
I gotta say, I'm really uncomfortable.
Well, you don't appear to be uncomfortable.
Well, it's like I always use the analogy of it's like a duck on water. So what you see is not necessarily what's, looks real graceful on top of the water, but under the water, you've got these feet going crazy, right?
Yeah. But, you eventually get used to that kind of a feeling. Don't you?
Not yet. Maybe 10 more podcasts and I'll
Well, I never thought of myself as a public speaker, but I got involved with the Toastmasters organization and learned to express myself with words. And I think that's very important for an artist, because we need to know how to talk about our work.
It's so hard, and I've got to tell
It
you,
is.
it's so hard, and that's why I love these opportunities, and I love that you've done this to give artists a voice. And I find myself sort of leaning heavily on you, Jerry, to guide me through, because there's a reason why I'm a visual artist, and it's because maybe expressing with my words is not my strong suit.
That's a very good point. And I think that we all, as artists, have to express ourselves outward. Like I said, I was pursuing a career as a professional singer.
Mm-hmm.
I was expressing myself through music, and I think that that's very important. But that music and art they're very closely related. And I think that you've actually said that yourself. Well, many artists, not just photographers, but many artists use their own bodies to create their work. Yours are very tasteful, I have to say. Very, very tasteful. And it makes it more personal when you yourself are the model, does it not?
It absolutely does. Yep. And and I'm glad that you find them tasteful. I know that some people are maybe a little put off because there are a couple that are a little bit more racy than others, but I try to keep it tame. I have a reputation as a psychologist to keep in mind when these are put out there. So that's always in the back of my mind as well.
Have your twins seen these images?
They have seen the images, and so I have to keep their little 9-year-old minds, in mind when I'm doing this too.
There you go. Very good. Very good. Good mom.
Thanks. I try my
Good mom and good photographer. Well, it just takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work.
Sure does.
Well, as the photographer, the model, I would guess that this whole process is very labor intensive. In other words, you pose, then you have to run back to the camera to see what you've got, and then you go back and you pose again because it wasn't good, and you go back and forth and back and forth. So, isn't how many times do you have to go through that process where you pose? I mean, I'm sure it varies depending on what you get and all that. There's variables there.
Well, here's the thing. When we were talking before that, I started this series when I was in the middle of COVID. So it was just, I only had myself to rely on. And now that things are opening back up and, I have so many ideas for other songs that I want to try to create an image for that include somebody else. And
You mean somebody else as a model or somebody else behind the camera?
Somebody else as a model, and in particular, probably it would be a dyad. So myself with somebody else when I'm thinking about some other songs. And I've held off on that because I'm not ready to share my process with somebody else. It is, you really nailed it when you said labor intensive, because there are times when I'm dripping sweat. I think the best example of one of the most labor intensive shoots that I've done was the one that was inspired by the song by Blue October called Sway. And I had dumped probably 6 boxes of salt on my kitchen floor, and I had Christmas lights, strings of Christmas lights, but the angle was taken from high up, much higher than my tripod could get, because I'm tall, I'm 5'9". So to get that angle, I had to be very high. So the tripod was actually up on top of a ladder balanced on books. So I had to, very precarious, very precarious. And so in between shoots, I'm wearing a gown, a floor length gown in that shoot. And so I had to pose, and I only have, I think my camera, the longest setting I have is 10 seconds on my Nikon. And so I set the timer, I run up the ladder, I make sure I'm in the right time, and then I have to run down, shoot it, go back up and look. And I must have done 150 to 250 shots,
oh my God.
frames for just that image. And I have so many great ones, but it was so exhausting, and I was sweating and just like, so it's not a very pretty process.
Well, what was that image called?
It's called Sway.
It's called Sway. Okay. And here, if I can show it, I'll show one image that I don't think this is it. This involves the Christmas lights, though.
That's probably, yep, that's the one.
That's Sway?
That's Sway, yep.
Okay. All right. Very nice.
Thank you.
And you're holding your shoes, too.
I am holding the shoes of somebody else. So those are it's hard to tell in that image. And I didn't realize it until somebody else brought it to my attention, but that it could be my shoes or it could be someone else's shoes. Those are actually male shoes. So it was sort of capturing the absence of someone.
Of course, sure. Which I think that most of your work is about the absence of someone.
That's so interesting that you pick up on that.
I listened to the other podcast. Don't remember. But, talking about you being the model and your viewers not knowing that you're the model, I had that feeling at first that this can't be her. This cannot be Ashley. And then I come to realize, hey, this is Ashley in images. So, I have to commend you for the work that you're doing there, because that has to be so, so difficult. Now, did you ever think of hiring an assistant to be behind the camera?
I have, and actually I've got a wonderful friend who lives close by me who I run almost all my images past, and she sometimes helps me creatively as I'm coming up with concepts. She's probably the only person that I would feel comfortable with involving her in the process, but even still, I don't think I'm ready.
Well, you don't want to do it till you are ready.
Absolutely. I think it would just, the whole process would be different. Right. Yeah. I mean, you understand.
I do. Well, speaking of concepts, is that a difficult process for you to come up with concepts? I mean, is it a quick type thing, or do you have to mull it over for, say, hours or days or weeks or whatever?
Both. So there are songs that I'm drawn to and lyrics that I'm drawn to where the image comes to me very quickly, and then I have to figure out how do I put that concept into an image. I will say that so since I started this, I've been contacted by several bands, and what they want me to do is either album covers or they want me to create an image for them where they can use it on social media. When I do that, because it's not a song that I've picked, it's something that they're sending to me. They send me the song and they send me lyrics and they say, create an image for us. So that there's one musician that I'm working with currently, and I have been listening to his music incessantly for probably 3 to 4 months, and I still just can't quite get it right.
Can you share who that is?
Probably not at this moment, but soon enough. I'm getting really close. I think I have the image in mind. For this one, I will absolutely need a model for, and I think for this one, that will be okay for what I'm planning for the shoot.
Do you ever interpret? Now, let's stop a moment, because what we're talking about, and this is for the listeners, what we're talking about is a series that you do called See the Songs,
right?
Which is very. You want to explain that further? That concept, it's in and of itself.
Yeah, it's a difficult concept. What I'm finding is some people get it and gravitate towards it right away, and other people, once I explain it, they say, "Oh, now we get it," because they've seen. I post my images, the more tame ones, on social media. And sometimes people are like, I don't get it. So thanks for asking the question. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking song lyrics and I'm trying to visually interpret them. So for each image I have, there's a typically a very specific stanza in a song that I have in mind when I create the image. Or there's certain words that are used in a song. And some of them I have even posted on social media, and I've said, what song do you see? Because there are clues in there that I think someone could pick up pretty quickly if they're familiar with the music. Other ones I would not expect anyone to get at all, because you would have to know exactly the lyrics that I had in mind when I shot it.
Well, a quick question. Would you ever interpret music without lyrics?
That's a great question. I think that because music affects us all differently, and it certainly evokes feelings and emotions and states of being, for sure I would do that. I think it's a little easier when you've got the lyrics, because it triggers certain things that you can incorporate into a shoot. But for sure, I just haven't really thought about that. So I like that idea, and I'm going to think about it some more.
Okay, I'm gonna issue you a challenge.
Okay.
I listen to jazz.
Okay.
When I paint, and I prefer to listen to jazz without lyrics.
Okay.
And I prefer to listen to jazz of a song that I don't know.
Oh.
Because otherwise, I'm singing the lyrics while I paint. So, yeah, you get my.
I did 100%.
One of my favorite bands, is called Moon Hooch.
Okay, I'm writing this down.
All right, so that's your challenge. Listen to Moon Hooch and see if you can interpret some of their music through photography. But Moon Hooch is a band where they take traffic cones. They're saxophonists. Most of them are saxophonists. They take traffic cones and they make this huge, what do I want to call, mute. No, it's not really a mute, because a mute kind of blocks the sound. But they stick it in the bell of the horn, which creates the length of the sound and makes really deep bass.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty awesome.
Okay. Is there a particular song that you gravitate towards?
No.
Okay.
I just like it all.
All right, Jerry. Challenge accepted.
Okay, great. Let me know when you come up with something, or if you come up with something. And if you don't, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love a good challenge. You know, I have people contacting me all the time, and they'll say, "This is my favorite song. What can you do with it?" So I've gotten those requests, and I actually had originally thought I want to do this for other people. I want to put other people in their favorite songs, but it didn't take off the way that I had hoped. So, maybe one day.
Now, here's a song with lyrics that I really, really like. It's very slow. It's called Here's That Rainy Day.
I'm writing this one down too.
Okay.
Who sings it?
Look up the lyrics on that, or listen to it. But
yeah,
I love that.
Who sings it?
I don't recall. I used many years ago when I was teaching music in high school. My kids in the choir didn't like it, but I didn't care. I made them sing it anyway.
yeah. You're the teacher. You get to pick.
Yeah, you got it. Well, I think that's interesting. You wear so many hats. Well, and you do. I guess you do your publication and all that yourself. Everything.
Yeah, I created the website myself. I did have a little help from somebody that was really well versed in creating websites, but for the most part, the bone structure I did, and he just helped me sort of refine it a little bit. But yeah, it's been you know what? It's what I love. I have been in love with photography since I was a little girl. My dad had a dark room in our house, and that's so I sort of was around it. And he just, it was just family pictures and things like that. And then when I was in high school, I got more involved. And then it was a way that I made a little extra cash when I was in grad school. And I started in a community-based photography program, and I taught for them. I taught the darkroom section of their photography class, and cool. I would just spend hours in the darkroom.
Do you remember your first camera?
100%. A Minolta X700.
Was that 35 millimeter?
Yeah.
So you used a lot of film.
All film, and it was only when we were chatting just briefly before we started the show. It wasn't really until I picked up my camera recently to begin this series that I started to shoot digitally, and it has been a rough transition. It's just not easy to go from film to digital. It's like two different beasts altogether.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But a great game changer.
A great game changer, and just the immediate feedback that you get. I mean, I used to go out and shoot with my film camera, and I would shoot 12 to 14 rolls in one shoot. And when I was trained, my teacher told me, if you walk away with one good shot, you've done it, you've won. Exactly. And I think that's probably why I shoot so much digitally. That's just how I was trained. But yeah, the immediate feedback is amazing. Of course, you're missing that kind of process of, I would develop all my own film in my kitchen or my apartment, and then with the chemicals, and then they're dry, the negatives are drying, and I mean, it was weeks before you'd see your images. I'm
laughing because as you're speaking, your little girl goes crawling across the floor.
I didn't know you could see that.
That was great. For the listeners, Ashley has twins, a boy and a girl. They're 9 years old, and she told them they're leaving the house, and she told them to crawl on the floor to get out the door.
I thought they'd be down low enough where no one would see them. So
she was low, but I could see her.
Okay.
And she was moving very, very slowly.
Oh, good. They follow directions very well.
I love it. Yeah, you're a good mom. You got them trained well too.
That I do. And I thought I said something really inspiring.
Yeah, sure. Well, you state that you donate proceeds to the charity that the band or the artist wants you to donate the proceeds to. Do you make enough to cover your production costs?
No, not at all. Not at all.
You don't keep enough of. Oh, there goes the boy. He's going that way.
Oh boy, I don't know what I need to do to like.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. All right.
Please,
yeah, I made that decision after I heard the lead singer of Blue October did an interview that I was listening to, and he talked. Now I see it. He talked a lot about ego and other artists sort of, riding his coattails and things like that. And I thought long and hard about that. And I was like, I don't want this series to be about me. I don't want it to be about taking something away from another artist. So I felt like that was the best way to give back, that I'm truly not trying to make any money on this. It's just, this has been a project that's been in the back of my head for probably 15 years, and I just never did anything about it. And I really started to think about it probably within the last 2 years. And then when COVID hit and some circumstances in my life happened where I thought, gosh, I need a hobby. I need to start thinking about, just get out of my head a little bit. And I thought, you know what? I used to pick up my camera all the time, and I've got this digital camera sitting here. I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to figure out how to use it. And I'm gonna do something with it. And so that's what I did.
Good job. Glad you did. I hope you have a good following, and if not, I hope it builds for you.
I think it's building. We're getting there.
Well, I likely don't ask I likely do not need to ask the following question, as I think that I already know the answer, and maybe we've already touched on it, so to speak. But what is your favorite subject?
My favorite subject to photograph?
Yes.
I do a lot of portraits.
Okay.
I think that, because I have this background, I have a lot of friends that will ask me if I'll photograph their children or do their Christmas cards. And I always respectfully decline, because I'm not the sort of photographer that's going to take an image that I think, people want on their Christmas cards. But I have invited friends' children over to my home and photographed them in a very creative sort of process. Mm-hmm. And those images, I have absolutely loved the way those have turned out.
Great. So, okay, other than see the songs, mm-hmm. You have a section about travel. Mm-hmm. So, and from what I saw of your travel images, you've traveled quite a bit.
I have traveled quite a bit, mostly Europe, and those were before COVID. Mm-hmm, sure. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to go on multiple wonderful trips with my camera.
So what would be your favorite location to take pictures?
So that's a two-part answer to that question. I think that my trip to Ireland, because the people in Ireland, I've never met a more friendly group of people traveling. I mean, they were so welcoming and so friendly. Everywhere we went, people would say, "Oh my gosh, you're from America," and they knew more about American history and politics than most Americans that I know. And they all wanted to take us under their wing. And there was one night, so I had gone on this trip with my friend Brian, and we were out in one of the pubs in Dublin. And so this bartender said, listen, they're called barkeeps in Dublin. And he said, we have an underground system here. So we close up, and then all the barkeeps decide where we're going to meet up. And there's like a path of pubs that stay open for the barkeeps. And every time we went out, they would say, you're coming with us. You're coming with us. And they wanted us to stay at their houses. They wanted to show us Dublin. It was just such a phenomenal experience. So I think the photographs, and there aren't any on my website, but photographing the people that I ran into in Dublin was one of my favorites, because I love taking portraits, and then it was just so many friendly people there. But in terms of just location, I mean, you can't beat Paris. The Eiffel Tower, to photograph the Eiffel Tower at night was one of my absolute favorite things to do.
In Paris, did you go to, now I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, Montmartre?
I did not, no.
Oh my God. If you go back, you have to go there, because they have a town square and it's full of artists.
I would love that.
Yeah, we did. We really loved it. Wish we could have spent more time there.
Mm-hmm. Did you check out the catacombs?
No.
Oh, when you go back,
huh?
When you go back, check out the catacombs.
There's a lot I'll check out.
Mm-hmm.
So is between Dublin and Paris, are those your two favorite European cities?
I would say so. I mean, there were some smaller towns that I visited in France and in Spain that I absolutely loved. But yeah, overall, those were my favorites.
Oh, I think every single one that we visited was my favorite. It was
Unbelievable. Yeah,
incredible.
Toulouse in particular. I would that was a trip with my friend Dan, and Toulouse was such a wonderful city.
Did you take your kids with you?
No, this is prior to kids.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me see. Let me check my notes here.
Sure.
How long do you think you will continue your series, See the Songs?
I think it's always going to be something that's going to be in the back of my head no matter what I'm working on, because I listen to a lot of music, and as I listen to new things or I hear a song that I haven't heard in a while, I think about it in a different kind of a way. So it's going to be an ongoing series, and I'll just add to it, over the years. But yeah, I've got other things in the works now too.
That's good. That's good. So you will keep it going because you've got so many fantastic ideas
I think so.
along with it. So do you have any other goals? Is there some group or some band that you would really like to, or artist that you would really like to work with that you haven't done so yet?
I mean, I would love to work more personally with any of the bands that I've already used their songs to create images, but to get to know them on a more personal level, and that's kind of been happening kind of behind the scenes. It happens a little bit, but because these bands are so well known, I think that's a pretty lofty goal. But I'm working with some smaller bands that are just as fantastic, and I love to see them. Like in Wisconsin is pretty close to me, and I have a lot of family and friends there, and so some of these bands I can see live there. So that's been really exciting.
Let's see. I jotted down some notes, and you've worked with Dave Matthews, King of Leon, U2, James T.W. Who's James T.W.?
Yeah, he did a remake of a Natalie Imbruglia song.
Okay.
And I like his version.
And Snow Patrol.
Yep. So those are.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, those are just the bands who inspire the images.
Okay. Interesting. So you've worked with others other than those on that list?
So I have not worked specifically with those bands. I'm just using their lyrics. But then, yeah, smaller bands that I'm working with that contact me directly. Yeah, I've got those too.
Okay. All right. Well, do you consider? Many people do not consider photography as being an art form. How do you address that?
I just can't even believe that that's a statement. That's the first time I've ever heard that. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating, because I feel like when I'm shooting that I am in no way artistically talented in any other medium.
But you're creative. No, you're creative.
Creative, yes, but I feel like I'm painting with light. That's sort of how I've always thought about it, because I think so much about light and I manipulate light. And when I'm manipulating light, I'm not doing it through an editing process. I do so limited amount of editing on my images. That's all that lighting happens when I'm setting up the shoot. So it's either natural light or studio lighting that I'm using, but it's not happening on my computer after I take an image.
So you don't use a filter at all?
No.
Okay, cool. Well, the image through the cracks. Is that what I want to say?
Mm-hmm.
What's it called?
Crack the shutters.
Crack the shutters.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see the light coming in from through the shutter, casting slats. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, like to get the shadows of the slats or to see the actual rays of light come through.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. There are a number of these images that I have in my mind to go back and reshoot, because it sort of evolves as I see what I've posted, or I see what I consider the final project, the final image to post, or what I consider a final image. But then I'll think I would like to go back and redo it. There are a couple, and that's actually one that I've considered reshooting. That one, if you could see where that image was taken, that's actually, I'm laying on a radiator that is about 8 inches wide. So
Oh my God.
it was such a small space to work with, that was just kind of what I got.
Suffering for your art.
Always. Always.
That's good. That's good. You also state that photography is a process of communication. Can you elaborate on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and I think that it happens on many different levels. So there is the communication between the camera and what I'm shooting, whether that's somebody else, or it's a sculpture, or it's a landscape. There's communication that's happening there, right? But the other big communication that takes place is when I've gotten, I mentioned this before, someone is seeing one of my images. And so there's the communication that they have between the image that they're seeing and their own experiences.
Well, what are you trying to communicate?
So I think what I'm trying to communicate through my images is mostly emotion.
Okay.
And emotion and mood and feelings in any way that you want to describe that. So there's a specific feeling that I am trying to evoke from the person that is viewing the image. And what I'm hoping is that it fits with the same feeling or emotion that is evoked by the song that you have auditorily when you're listening to that song. Yeah. So like when you go on the website, if you click on one of the images, it's paired with the song, and it's just a little snippet. But I'm hoping that there is that they are in sync with each other.
Sure. Okay, I like that. I like that very much. Well, Ashley, this has been great. I've enjoyed so much getting to know you better and talking to you, knowing more about your process and your art. It's great. Do you have anything that you would like to add?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. It's been so nice talking with you too. I've been looking forward to this for so long, and I'm so glad we finally connected. And I so appreciate you taking the time and giving artists their voices. I think what you're doing is amazing. And I also checked out your website and was so impressed. And I do have my homework that I'm going to start thinking about and working on for you.
Let me know how that goes.
I will.
Keep me posted, please do.
Definitely.
Well, again, thank you so much for being my guest today. And I will be in touch with you as the recordings become available and so forth. And I put your page up on the website.
Great. I look forward to it. Thank you so much, Jerry.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, you too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.